Good afternoon, everyone who joined across regions from SAR, GCC, and Singapore. Trust you and your families are doing well and staying safe. And thank you so much for investing your time today for this important panel discussion. Hope you all will agree. One side, COVID is ruined our personal lives, and in the cybersecurity space, we see a spike in external and internal threats. Today we have highly experienced and expert panel to discuss breaking down data leaks and data security. Hope the next 1 hour is going to be amazing learning session from the expert panelist. Before we start, some facts about SISA. SISA is a forensic-driven cybersecurity company. Actually, can you move to the next slide, please? We have global presence across 40 plus countries, and we have got 2,000 plus customers engaged on year-to-year basis. Some of the housekeeping notes here. Can you move to the next slide? Today's panel will last for 60 minutes, including Q&A session. By default, all the attendees will be in listening only mode. And if you have any Q&As, please do post during the session, and definitely we'll try to answer as many as possible. And let me introduce today's moderator for the session, who is not required any introduction, but definitely let me introduce myself. Who is Mr. Dashani Shantamurthy, who is founder and CEO of SISA. He has got more than 2 decades of experience exclusively in cybersecurity space, and he's the first payment security assessor in Asia. Of course, also a core payment forensic investigator. Dashan, is what do you to take over from here and introduce the
Thank you, Venkat, and very good afternoon to everyone. It's been a pleasure being part of this esteemed panel. It's an extraordinary set of guests that we have got today. Always excited to share as well as learn from highly accomplished professionals, cybersecurity professionals today. So we've got first Babita, I believe. Going to the next slide. Ashwini? Yeah. So Babita, of course, well-known figure in the banking industry. She's the Chief Information Security Officer of Catholic Syrian Bank. I have personally engaged with her in the past, and highly insightful. And one of the good things about Babita is she's able to go macro as well as micro. So very glad to have her. I'm sure her insight into this very exciting topic about data leaks and sensitive data is going to be very useful for the participants as well as for the panel. The next we've got Dileep. Dileep is the Chief Information Security Officer of LTI. He comes in with a whole lot of experience. I've in the past looked up to him. He's very active in the CISO forum, trying to share a lot of insights. And of course, he brings in a lot of perspective from the ITAS industry. So excited to have Dileep. Welcome on board. The next we've got Madhu Sudan, who's from Hinduja Global Solutions, HGS, one of the leading ITAS companies in the country and of course globally. Madhu is the corporate compliance officer at HGS with over 20 years of experience and very, very active in terms of the cybersecurity inputs and risks on a global landscape. He's also championed a lot of privacy-related initiatives inside his organization, so it's good to get his perspective. Last but not the least, we've got my colleague AP Arubindo Patra. We've got, and he's the chief engineer for our multiple set of our cybersecurity products, and he leads that. So we get a very good engineering background of any of the solutions that we speak as we move forward in this panel. So overall, a star-studded panel discussion, and then of course we've got all of you here to participate. So thank you so much, and this is obviously live in multiple forums, and we encourage you to ask a lot of questions as we go ahead with the panel. We want to keep it as interactive as possible, so you could shoot questions anytime, and I'm sure we'll do our best to answer. And if we don't know for some reason, or if we feel that we cannot answer that question, we would obviously come back. So feel free to keep it as interactive as we can, and make the best use of this opportunity. So first, to start off, if I can start with Dileep, so to speak. Breaches and sensitive data are, of course, across board, and it's statistically seen. We've had number of IT companies, ITS on a global scale. There've been compromises that we've been hearing all throughout. And just if you could probably give your 2 cents in terms of maybe the opening remarks with this topic in mind, which is sensitive data being discovered and organizations being compromised. Your take. We'll start off with that, and then obviously we will take the loop and then go to the other panelists as well. So Dileep, do you want to give a shot first?
Sure, Darshan. Thanks so much, and glad to be on this panel. Thank you for inviting me here. When we talk about this title, breaches and sensitive data, I think breaches have been a continuing event in our career. We've been seeing right from the donkey's years. But the perspectives have been changing. The data is now being the target, and sensitive data, when we talk about it, it could be anything. And the attackers are not looking at only that specific organization's data when they are attacking an organization. It could be possibly a jump box to go to the customers of that organization, or to third parties where they really want to target the attack eventually. So that would be one aspect looking at it. And at the same time, when we look at sensitive data as part of breach disclosures that are happening, we see a lot of events where organizations are not having their best practices in place, which is abuse of data in some manner. And that also gets exposed as part of these events. So I'll leave it at that to start with, and let's see how we go further.
Thanks, Dileep. And Babita, any comments to add there on the?
Yeah, thank you, Darshan. Thank you, Darshan, for the wonderful introduction and all. And it is a relevant topic for the time, wherein we are hit with a lot of cyber attacks nowadays. And the people like us who is working in the cybersecurity field, they are really worried nowadays, because as Dileep has mentioned, the attacks are not happening for the first time. It was there earlier also. But the frequency of attacks or number of organizations that has been attacked, that has increased, and that is why people started more. This cybersecurity field also is more sensitive nowadays. And earlier also ransomware attacks were there, but it was not that known to many unless the whole organization is affected, because we are able to recover from the attack by either different usage of different technologies. But now the fraudsters has used the tactics of exfiltrating the data before doing an attack, so that that brand name of the company will get affected, and the trust people are having with the company will be affected, which will be a major concern for all organizations. And fraudsters are using this tactics, wherein now the data is our oil. So they are targeting on that oil now. And that is what. So we have to be very careful in dealing with this data, and lot of measures we need to keep in mind while designing our architecture or while dealing with this data. So this is for the time being, and we'll take it forward with more detailed in the coming questions.
Sure, perfect. Madhu, just to we can't see you, but I know you're having some challenges with your video, but if you can quickly give your perspective, opening remarks, and then we get started.
Okay, so first and foremost is the regulatory framework. Okay, that's where everything starts. Okay, now there are various regulations like GDPR, HIPAA, CCPA, LGPD, so many other things. Okay, now each of this, they provide certain restrictions, they provide certain relaxation, and each geography has its own controls, it has its own framework. So for the perpetrator, what happens is, it's when you throw something at a perpetrator as a challenge, he would want to break it. Okay, it could be an insider, it could be an outsider. What is important is to understand as to what is the regulatory framework and build systems and processes which will not only control but also monitor as to what activities are happening either inside or outside. And right now, let me stop at this point and then we'll take it further.
Great. I think you set the context very right. So regulatory framework. So let's start with that. And who best then to start with Babita there? I mean, Indian regulatory system has actually changed gears there. With a lot of regulatory action, which is in some say it's pretty good. How as a CISO are you coping up with the regulatory acceleration or change, I could say. I mean, and what advice do you have for? We've got a very mixed audience here, and many of them are CISOs themselves or belong to the cybersecurity function. What's your take on that, and how should a bank, and a fraternity and people from the banking industry, what's your take on regulatory framework, and with these sensitive data, floating around? How do you marry both of them? Yeah.
See, first of all, we should thank the regulators who is helping us to come up with such framework which we need to comply with. I of course agree that it is a really tedious job for us to keep it and comply to this regulatory act. But many a times when we take it to the our management, it helps at many times if I say that it is a regulatory compliance. So that way it is helping us a lot. And with the regulatory framework, what I could suggest, it is not the only thing that need to be followed. We have to do something more than that. So this is a minimal thing that we have to keep in mind while securing our data. But what better we can do, that also from a CISO's perspective, I'll be thinking of. So following, and when it comes to the cybersecurity framework by RBI, especially in India, they have covered the best technologies available in the industry at that point of time in 2016, and they have come up with a better architecture or framework which has helped Indian banks to survive even at this point of time. And even I say that due to digitalization only, even during this pandemic time, we were able to cope up and our economy was not much affected. And we were like banks like us, we are able to reach to the people at their doorstep. So just imagine 10 years back, if such a pandemic would have happened, what will be the scenario? Can we think about a scenario wherein we cannot go to a bank, take money, or we don't have a money in our hand to do the day-to-day activities? So now, because of this pandemic, what has happened is like everyone started using digital methodologies or digital channels in a faster pace, wherein the speed was so high that there are chances that there might be some hiccups or some security breaches in this channel when we are going at a faster pace. And it is this speed which has been utilized by fraudsters, and they are using their brains to exfiltrate the data. And because of the speed of this digitalization, lot of cyber attacks are happening during this time, which is going on an alarming phase also. The common people are using mobile for making a payment, but they are not aware of what kind of app is with them and how this app need to be used, whether I can share the OTP. So many of the people, what I feel is more than 60% of the people, common man, doesn't know how to use this technology, and we are handing this technology to them. So regulators have to come up with some framework or some notion that public should be made aware about all these things before we accelerate this.
Sure, and I agree with you that the regulatory framework is actually facilitated our process in terms of especially getting a buy-in from the leadership team for various cybersecurity initiatives. And then, of course, there's a lot to be done though, but we are moving in the right direction. Moving to Dileep, especially from the ITES space, I mean, you see a lot of action out there as well. Obviously with increased digitization and number of people working from home, and I believe that though many of us are getting back to office, sensitive data happens to be one of the key concerns for the ITES sector as well. And of course, as an as a global IT company, you're always subject to various kinds of different privacy regulations as well for your customers. So how are you? If you can just show some light and throw some light on that perspective, it will be interesting.
Sure, Darshan. So in my earlier avatar, when I was part of the banking fraternity for over a decade, it was all about RBI, IRDAI, SEBI, and the likes, which was specifically to the banking industry alone. But then later on, when you look at it from ITES perspective or fintech perspective, your customers are global and cross-industry. And hence, it's as good as every regulatory framework, every compliance framework of the globe applies to you as an organization if you're servicing that group. So today I service media entertainment, manufacturing, ITES itself, as well as banking, financials, and the likes. So all those various kind of regulations do apply to us today, be it SAMA guidelines from the Middle East or NISA guidelines from UAE, or if I talk about CCPA from a privacy perspective in California or POPI Act in South Africa, all of them will directly apply to LTI today. And the most easiest approach to look at that is you have to understand, first of all, as an organization, what is the scope of your overall requirements from your stakeholders. As an ITES organization in India itself, I need to comply to the IT Act. I need to look at the basics of the SEBI because I'm a listed company. I need to look at then my customers after that, as to where my customers are placed and what kind of geographies as well as what kind of regulations do they apply for, and what are the standards that really I'm contractually committed to actually. So starting point, definitely I believe most organizations start with 27001 as your motherhood statement, and then take it from there, looking at, okay, am I a financial transaction company? I will then touch upon PCI DSS and PADSS. If I am looking at perspectives of looking at overall organizations, I would say NIST 853 is one of the mother or parenthood statements or standards which covers almost all kind of regulations today, and it helps an organization simply comply faster. So what we've done at LTI is we've developed our own internal proprietary UCF, a Unified Compliance Framework, which has considered the best of standards like 27001, SOC 2, CIS Top 20, SANS Top 20, NIST, and the likes, plus an amalgamation of all our client contractual commitments as a library to pull down whatever is the best learnings from all of them, and then bring an upgrade to our policies and internal regulatory frameworks. And that's how we go about compliances for our organization.
Fantastic. Just a note to all the participants, you can feel free to type in your questions. We will try to keep it as interactive. I promised you that we'll keep it interactive. So feel free to shoot questions, and as the questions are coming and I find it appropriate, I'll pose it to the panelists. But Dileep, you made a very important point is on scope, right? At the end of the day, the scope today, one of the key things that it's such a important question, but a very basic and a fundamental question. But still, when you say when we decide scope, it's such a different. Different people interpret it in different ways. So moving to Madhu, Madhu, how have you kind of scoped your compliance, because there's one scope in terms of what you need to do from a compliance standpoint and what you need to do from a standpoint of security. So Madhu, if you can throw some light, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so our company is basically into a third-party BPO operations. Okay, naturally, so we service multiple geographies. We operate out of multiple geographies also. What is important here is much before we take up any sort of a process development, what is important is to identify the scope. So here I would broadly classify the scope into three. which is personal scope, territorial scope, and material scope. We should identify this first. Once we identify, we get to know what is the information that we are collecting, where that particular regulation is applicable, to what extent is it applicable. The next is in material scope, you can broadly classify them as automated and non-automated. Do I collect? What is my method of collection? How do I collect? How do I process? And are there automated processes in place? Are there manual processes? So these are some of the things that should be collected well in advance, much before we develop or implement a particular process. So that's the start point. And thereafter, you will have inventories. You can create processes for each of them as to how to handle, what should be my design, what should be my level of control, etc. So one, the act serves as a guideline, but at the same time, the processes in the manner in which I build a process within an organization plays a very key role in protecting data.
Sure. So Babita, just linking up that from a banking context, how do you think scope one is from a compliance standpoint, from a regulatory framework. Second is actually identifying where the data is, especially now that data is moving all over, and you have some of the large private banks moving on to cloud as well now. So and then of course work from home is something that we've been having to live with. So from a banking standpoint, where do you see data identification, data discovery, where is that headed towards?
Yes, data, as I stated earlier, it is a oil now. So everything is revolving around the data. How we are able to protect the data, first we should have the visibility of where this data is residing, and from where we are collecting the data, starting from the collection of the data till the process, then where the data is going to reside, and what kind of data is being collected. That also we have to have a better idea, and which data I want to protect, that also I should have an idea. This is the basic framework, only the outline of how data need to be collected and processed and all those. For those purposes, have a clear-cut idea about all these things. Once we have this, then as you rightly said, since we have a system already in place, we have to go for a data discovery to identify all these things. Because many of the projects would have been started much early, wherein we may not be aware of what kind of data is being collected for a particular thing. And at that time, whether the data is being stored as an encrypted form, which all tables or which all place this data is available. That also we should have a clear-cut idea. And for that, of course, data discovery is very much required. And once we discover the data, then we need to get the help from data owners to classify the data. Once the data is classified as per the request from the data owner, after that only wiki security people can think about how we can secure this data. So all these things lies in a single bundle. So at any point of time, if any one link is not coordinating, then the whole process will be chopped. So the right identification of the data, classification of the data, and protecting the data, that is the biggest or the tedious job it is there when it comes to the prevention of a data leakage or to protect the data. And many a times what practical difficulty which I find is to get a clear-cut classification of the data. Even if we know that, okay, these are the data, for whenever a bank is concerned, I can say account number, card number, this PII data, all these are secure data, that minimal level of visibility is there. But still there are some data which is required which will be more sensitive than what it is, and we need to protect it. For example, a board meeting agenda or resolution of a particular board meeting, and being a listed company, if it is being leaked by someone, if we are not classifying that agenda as a more sensitive agenda, and we are not taking much of measures to classify it or to secure it, then again the same thing will happen. Whether it is one data or a particular pertaining to the card data or something else, when a data breach occurs, the impact on the company is the same. So that is what. So we should be very careful while defining the whole process. So now, when the data protection bill comes into existence, which we are eagerly waiting for, once that comes in, there will be a clear definition of data owner, data this custodians, data processor. All these things will be clearly defined, and every people in the ecosystem, if they have to follow this, then there will be a closed loop. Otherwise, if only a few people are following it and few people are not following it, I don't think that it will have the exact efficiency what we are expecting may not be made available. And here also, when we think about data breaches, which is happening recently, it is not the breaching of a bank account or somewhere the bank, some data is getting exfiltrated. There are a lot of people. For a simple example, I would say that if a shopkeeper has started a site to sell his goods, because during this pandemic, the only way he can sell the goods is by online. So he's starting a website and he is connecting to some payment gateway. And from that website, we are giving our card details, our PIN number, everything has been shared in that website. And if that site is not secured, and our card details is captured in that particular site, which can be easily attacked by a fraudster, and the data is being exfiltrated and published. And ultimately, that is why we are coming across everyday news that a lot of banks' data is available there. Because the customers are inputting this data without knowing that which website, how secure that website is, that people are putting their details into it. So this whole ecosystem need to be sensitized about the importance of data. Then only I think we'll reach up to a particular level which it should be.
Excellent point, Babita. And in fact, one of the key things that we were talking, as a forensic investigator, one of the other things that we are seeing is PII data being used to compromise sensitive data. I mean, when I say sensitive, even cardholder data for that matter. So one of the key use cases that we are seeing is, or misuse cases we are seeing is, especially in the PCI scope, we focus only on the cardholder data and try to bubble wrap that entire environment. But what happens is people are now compromising the non-PCI environment, capturing the PII information, and using that information for compromising sensitive data. For example, transaction logs of a e-commerce transaction that is happening, they are using that information to call the end user or the cardholder and saying, hey, you did this transaction on an e-commerce portal in the last 2 minutes, it's not gone through. Would you be able to redo the transaction? And then they're getting all the data. So very valid point. And it also sets the stage for getting this, from AP standpoint, because AP, you work with a lot of banks and IT companies from a data discovery and a data classification standpoint. What are your insights, and how are organizations doing the right thing in terms of data discovery, and to build on what Babita's case is, how are they doing data classification so that effectively they're able to then put the controls, which Madhu spoke about earlier. So just if you can throw some light, AP.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, thanks, Darsan. So definitely, as Madhu and Babita and Dileep mentioned about the different privacy regulations. So definitely, business has to comply with the different privacy regulations like GDPR, CCPA, and all the regulations. Basically, the main the objective is to securing the data and data privacy. So the first step to securing the data is to identify the data, like what kind of data I am in my organization I'm holding, what kind of data, and then classifying the data based on their criticality level, like whether it's a sensitive data or confidential data. And then once we discover and identify and classify the data, then we can write appropriate control. Like some data may be sensitive, but they may be lying around in some user desktop, which is not encrypted itself. So once the attacker will get inside of the system, it's quite easy for them to take the sensitive data. But if you apply those controls and put into a secure locations or quarantine it, so definitely they will find it very difficult to get that data. And once they will get the data, also you have to decrypt it. So easily they cannot get the data. So these are the various controls we can apply. And definitely all these things cannot be done manually. So we need a lot of automations because the data is everywhere. It's like in user desktop, it can be in databases, it can be in application logs, or it can be in S3 buckets. Like the S3 buckets which are publicly available, and all the sensitive data are there in S3 buckets. So attackers can go and just access those files from the S3 bucket, and they can download and they can get a hold of the sensitive informations. So definitely running so the data discovery exercise automating by using automating tool helps to identify where exactly your sensitive informations are there, and then classify it and then predict it.
Yeah, very good point. And then this also brings out the set stage for the other question that we've got through one of the channels is especially in this kind of a world where we've got many organizations are approaching the multi-cloud environment. You've got Google, you've got AWS, you've got Azure, you've got Oracle, all sorts of maybe even Ali Cloud. Since we have a global audience here. So, Dileep, how are you, seeing, the data discovered in the classification? And I'm not sure how, and maybe even your customers, right? So how, I'm sure that you are helping a lot of digital transformation projects for your customers. How are you as a CISO handling this piece? And yourself, as well as what you see international, organizations doing for this data discovery and classification, so to speak?
So Darshan, when we look at it from multi-cloud environment, both on-premise as well as global cloud providers, the problem remains the same: data discovery, and again, then putting right controls in place, as you called out. Now, LTI is no different. We also have a similar kind of environment. It's hybrid cloud. We work both for our practice requirements as well as our enterprise needs across AWS, GCP, as well as Azure, and across various platforms, be it IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS also. So looking at that, we do work closely with our practice and have deployed internally a self-developed tool on data discovery and data protection requirements, which helps us identify PII and PHI data across the organization and help us classify them and put them into right control buckets as needed from a data protection perspective. In addition to that, for enterprise other data requirements, there are different classification agents which are also deployed, which takes care of those aspects. And we believe into the concept of which people call it as eating your dog food. We look at it as drinking our own champagne, and that's where we kind of bring it first to our organization, test and deploy it across an organization of our size, and reach across the globe. Validate such tools and then take it to our customers and show them the efficacy of the tools, show them how it really works and how we have done it at LTI, so that they can get more confidence and look at that as part of their digital journeys.
Excellent point. Excellent. Moving forward, Madhu, if I can take it to you in terms of what's the boardroom discussions around, around data leaks and on data security? What kind of assurances are at the board people are looking forward to? People such as yourself and CISO. So what do you see? What are the questions being asked there, and how are you approaching it? So you can give some clues to the participants in terms of what's working and what's not working, in terms of giving them the comfort, because I'm sure these are keeping the boardrooms also very active, and I'm sure very interesting discussions in the boardroom that are happening around the space. So what are the what are those pointers, if you can throw some light, and then I'm sure everyone would want to chip in. Feel free.
Yeah, so as Babita mentioned, the first and foremost is identifying the data footprint. Where all is my data? Where is it getting stored? The next important activity is what the board is concerned about is whether my data is safe. If my data is required to be safe, first and foremost is I should know what is my inventory, what is my data inventory, and where is it kept, who has access, and then whether that particular data, does it have more than sufficient information or does it meet minimum requirements. So there is a rule called the minimum necessary rule. Any data that we collect should follow this minimum necessary rule, which is, in other terms, you can call it as data minimization. The next other important is who all have access other than my employees. Who others have access? Is my data flowing to some vendor partner? Is it going to some other agency? Have I subcontracted it? Whether that information is one side, two side. So we should know about how my data is traversing through my network until it reaches the destination. Okay, so getting to know as to who has access, what type of, to what extent data access should be provided to them, that is critical. More than everything is educating the internal persons who handle that information. Okay, some may think that, okay, some information, say for example, if it is a UPSI, unpublished sensitive information, if one is handling a UPSI, as to what are those cautions that he should keep in mind while handling this information. Similarly, from maybe a CEO level to the junior most employee, everybody should be provided in awareness. They should be sensitized as to how they should handle information, and they should also be made aware as to if they find an anomaly, what is the mechanism of reporting it in the most quickest manner. Because if my capability of detecting a particular data leak is faster, I can control it much faster, and I can minimize the damage. And
Sure.
thereupon, so based on all of this, as to what is my current practice, how do I monitor, how do I analyze? More than everything is, what is my preventive action? How do I learn from an event that has already occurred elsewhere? How do I adopt that into my organization, strengthen my processes and systems?
Sure, Madhu. One maybe a quick 20-second viewpoint from Babita on what are the boardroom questions that are being asked, and then maybe we'll open up for one poll. So Babita, quickly, 20 seconds.
20 seconds is not required. Only one question has been asked to me. Are we safe? That's the only question it has been asked, and I should answer that. And I answer this with a smile only. Because what I can say is that, yes, of course, we are safe. We have done whatever possible way to heighten our security, but I cannot say that it will never be hacked. Okay. There might be, because the trend and the technology which has been used by the are much ahead than what we have right now. So we can never tell that we will never be hacked. So I always tell to my group that always have the feel that we might get attacked. So at that point of time, how fast we are able to recover or contain that is our capability. So now we all have to work in that way. And rightly said by Madhu, like first we have to prevent, that whatever possible way we can prevent it, that is the first thing we should do. If that prevention is not happening, then immediately detection, how fast we can detect, that is our capability.
Great. So poll question coming up, and then I'll probably summarize Babita's point. Ashwini, you can open up the poll. So the question here is, how would you rate your overall data protection awareness in your organization, since we spoke so much about it? So we'll just give a quick 30 seconds for people to type in their answer. So how would you rate the overall data protection awareness in your own organization? So feel free to click. I think the options are high, average, and needs improvement. You just got 40% voted, so please, all of you can vote. Okay. All right. So do you want to publish the results? Okay, awesome. So we've got 43% who says their data protection awareness is high, 50% say it's average, and 7% needs improvement. And that gives us the right platform. So one question that I have for the panelists, maybe whoever is appropriate can take it. Do we know where our data is, in because protection comes in secondary, right? So goes back to the earlier question: how well do we know where our what's our sensitive data, where is it located, how well do we have the control over data? Because then only we can do data protection. Any quick thoughts on that? Yeah, go ahead, Dileep.
I think I'll answer it in just a very simple manner. If there is any organization in this forum today which can say that they have assets given to the users who have got no storage capacity locally, and all data only resides in systems and not on email or any other channels, then I know where the data lies.
Right. Very important, yeah, because data today is all over the place, and we just losing
It's unstructured
control.
data, which is the main problem. I know where my servers and network devices and clouds are exactly. I can pinpoint at every point of the data and lock it and control it. It's the unstructured data that really is the killer for all of us, and that's where we do not have any idea about it. And just I want to take a couple of seconds more, Darshan, on the poll point which was raised. In fact,
Sure.
I think it could have been slightly modified or could be taken up possibly later on. Is you asked about what is data protection awareness in the organization, but I would rather put it as what is data sensitivity awareness of the organization. Because protection wise, everybody might know, okay, sensitive data has to be classified. But does the organization understand that whatever data a user creates as part of his lifetime is not his personal data, it is the organization's data, and it is sensitive at all times? Because that is one aspect which all the users normally end up thinking that, hey, this was something I created as part of my presentation for internal use, and therefore I thought I can send it to my personal email ID.
Very, very true. And we have had cases wherein where people have said that this is the data that I created. So when I'm moving jobs, so I need to carry the data with me.
Exactly.
So yeah, good pointer. Very, 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 very true. Babita, you want to add anything to that, or?
Yeah, I 100% agree with Dileep and what Madhu also has said, and many of the different
the other important thing. Sorry. The other important thing is while while we say that okay, structured, unstructured, it boils down to the design as to how my network and application access. What is my current applications? What is the design that I have implemented in terms of protecting and making sure that the data resides in a specific place? When I say design, not only application, it also boils down to the endpoint. Have I locked everything? Have I put appropriate controls? And what is the most efficient method of me detecting that where my actual data resides? Now, in spite of all of this, most of them, our end users, they are much intelligent than any of us. They will know how to take the data. See, at the end of the day, what is very critical is the more I say that this is sensitive data, it creates curiosity, and that curiosity will lead them to perform certain experiments. So I should also know as to what is my communication. How do I communicate? Do I communicate it right? That plays a very important role.
Right. Very true. Very true. Just to make sure that we've got some poll, some questions coming out here, so make sure that we answer it. So one question, I think Abhilash says that very true, making users understand data classification is the main point. So it's more like an acknowledgement. One question we've got from Ashutosh is, as an end user, do we have any way to figure out how secure a mobile app is? As far as I know, most of the app lack kernel hardware level security. Does anyone want to take that question?
Okay, I'll go for that
Yep.
since we have talked about mobile app. See, it is here also the most important thing lies with the user of the mobile. That is what I was mentioning. The person who is having that app should know that what purpose this app is being used, and whether my mobile can have any play some other application like AnyDesk or TeamViewer or anything kind of thing with which other can get into my mobile. So that is what first main thing is, that no application has the capability to do everything. Okay, mobile app was initially designed for the transaction purpose. Then only because of this, all people started exploiting around the mobile app, and it is not because of the issue with the mobile app. It was some other app which is residing in the mobile, which is capturing the or exfiltrating the data, sensitive data, and is leading to a cyber fraud or cyber attack. So here the main thing is that okay, we can come up with some application wherein it will be a kind of antivirus kind of thing which can be deployed in our mobile. There also it should be an app should be able to deploy in the mobile to check for the known vulnerabilities. There are again comes the case of zero trust. There is if something comes for that particular day or it is a new kind of an attack, then again this get compromised. So the user, the main thing is that how the user is going to tackle with this critical with the device which is having some critical application, especially when it comes to transaction of money and all. So that way the user also have to be more capable to understand that and don't install unwanted applications in their mobile.
Right, important. Anyone else wants to add? AP, do you want to add anything there? How, as an end user, do you have a way to figure out a secure mobile app? I mean, since you come from the development background, would you be able to say, how could one do this? Do you have any thoughts?
Only authorized stores you should download the apps from only authorized stores. Don't download from the websites and all those things, because those they will not have any signed-in certificates and all those things. They're not validated. So that's what I can suggest. One thing to check, and also you have to check what for what purpose that application is built on, and what are the access there I'm asking. So some application is for only texting and messaging, and they want to access entire media files and everything. So you have to think whether you have to give all those access or not. So while using such apps.
Interesting. All right, Ashwini, we are getting closer to our ending of the panel. So you have any question, second poll question you want to ask, Ashwini?
Sure, Darshan. I'm launching it.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So second question is, what is the biggest risk for your organization when it comes to data protection? What do you think is the is external people, data hackers, external malicious actors, insider threat? So one of the key things that we are also seeing because of our forensics investigations is a lot of insider risks are rising because of work from home and access to data, and then of course outdated policies or protection controls or anything else. So you've got about 10-20 seconds left, so feel free to give us your comments. So what is the biggest risk for your organization when it comes to data protection? Okay. So this might give us some clue. So the poll says external people typically about 28%, insider threat is 39%, so it's pretty high. Then outdated policies 28% and other 6%. Okay, interesting. Any comments? Any of the panelists have any comments on this poll?
I agree with that poll. Like it is an insider threat, and like Dileep has mentioned, no, it is something is residing in the email. Now, many of the communications which are happening between the people inside the organization or with vendor, even for network, especially from network aspect and all vendors, we are handling it by the vendor. Many a times I have seen even the IP addresses are being transferred through just a text to the vendors. So mail is a very critical thing. So it is very relevant that the people inside the organization should be well educated about the usage of the data. It is not the criticality of the data, because always I see that is a touch me not. If someone tells not to touch, then we have the tendency to touch it. So it is better way, right way to put it across this. We can say that how we can. Normally I used to tell that it's a security culture that need to be built in the organization, not only with the perspective of data, from all the aspects, which I 100% believe that if we have that culture in the organization, no data breach or no cyber attack will happen. So the insiders are the most strongest pillar which can help against these attacks.
So it's actually interesting, and I'll probably open it up for Madhu, because Madhu, you come from the from an industry which has a lot of call centers and pretty younger generation of the people working. So do you kind of classify? You can classify, as per Gartner, there are various ways. Of course, insider risk can happen. One is, of course, insider risk is genuine, lack of awareness, education. Second is, of course, malicious, right? Because we're now onboarding people remotely, and obviously background checks take a lot of time, and you have people moving out. It's kind of a moving crowd. How do you avoid these data leaks and the sensitive data stuff, especially in such a I would say dynamic workforce? All right. So how have you come across? What are the things that you think that ITS companies, or even for that matter, generally organizations should be looking at? Because I think this work from home culture is not going to go away completely.
Correct. So the first and foremost is, when we have to classify this into various categories, we can say senior management, mid and junior. Now, most data compromises occur at the junior level. The reason is, one, they might not be aware, and they are not sensitized in terms of how information should be classified. When I say junior, it also includes any outsourced agencies, maybe something like an office attendant who is carrying certain information. He might be, let's say, a particular person, a senior manager gives a particular file. He says, okay, this is the content, give it to XYZ. Now he already knows this information as to what is he carrying. Now, to that extent, while somebody is delivering some information to somebody, they should be very clear in terms of what should be communicated, how much should be communicated. Now, at the junior level, what happens, since it is dynamic and the churn rate is also higher, what is critical here is as to who are we onboarding, what is his background. And the other important thing is, do not, while hiring a person, ensure that the qualifications, his experience are appropriate to the role. Never ever take a person who has higher qualification than what is required. The general tendency, what happens is, they try to experiment. Okay, so now these are some of the things that we'll have to keep in mind. The second other important thing is, now what is his personal behavior? While conducting interview, what is very, very critical is, what is his personal behavior? So you can introduce tests like, let's say, as to what are his hobbies, how does he spend his time, what are his other extracurricular activities. Some of them, what they do is, they do this number crunching. Some have the ability to remember a 20-digit number. And I have spoken to many of them, okay, and I have identified that a person who can remember a 20-digit number, he breaks that into a block of 4 or a block of 3. And you should know as to, if this is his, when you give this test, you will understand his mind as to what is the likelihood of if he gets to know a particular number, is there a possibility of he remembering it and noting it down when he goes out. So you have to build a system in such a manner that before even he leaves the system, you should erase that from his mind. Okay, that is critical. And that can happen only if you analyze, do research, and come out with processes and design programs in such a manner that so when you design a program, he should not feel that this is intended only towards me. He should enjoy it. At the same time, my objective should be achieved.
Interesting perspective from the human. It's a kind of a difficult, straightening the dog's tail kind of a issue. It's a difficult issue to deal with, and I can completely understand. AP, from a technology standpoint, what are the trends that you are seeing, right? So because now with the work from home, kind of thing. So from a technology standpoint, especially since we also have the the work from home security solutions kind of thing. So technology, what are organizations doing for such kinds of work from home or work from anywhere thing?
Yeah, so definitely. So now if you see, most of the employees are working from home. Okay, and while there are a lot of controls, while we're working from office, we have like physical controls, or they're being monitored physically from physical video surveillance cameras. So all those things are not happening. Though they're working on critical functions, they're still working from home without all those controls. So definitely the risk is there. Okay, because you cannot trust also everyone. There are new people joins, and then we don't have we're not meeting face to face. So definitely you cannot build the relationship and trust also while working from home. But all those controls can be also implemented while working from home. You can also install few tools like as you have mentioned, the SISA Empower, where employees can be monitored whenever they will start working from home on, or whenever they will start working on some sensitive applications. So automatically it starts monitoring the employees through the webcam, and you can start recording also, where it will monitor, and it will also notify in case of any suspicious activity, like someone is trying to take some photograph of some sensitive data, right? So it can send some alert, and where you can do some kind of remediations, like blocking that user from accessing the applications and all that stuff.
Great. So Dileep, anything that you have to add? A quick. I mean, we are almost 3 minutes into. Just have 3 minutes to conclude. But any quick 30 seconds viewpoint on insider threats? What do you see from a IT space? Where is the what is your take on it?
I think IT space is not very much different, apart from the main fact being that compared to other organizations where you have a small section of a organization which is called an IT team dedicatedly, and you've got some privileged users who have got USB and admin rights in the organization. And IT is the organization is an IT company, so every person is a developer or a tester, and hence everybody requires admin rights and USB rights eventually for their work purposes. That's what they're designed to do. They all will be shadow IT eventually because they're supposed to do that as part of business. So the requirements are, how do you manage the controls to give them the needs, but at the same time monitor them and have control threat assessment around it. That's what I would think is applicable to any organization. You do continuous threat assessment, validate, and put right controls in place, be it not always a blocking control, but at least a monitoring control to see that how you can detect fast and bring it to closure rather than become a hurdle to the business.
Excellent. Thanks, Dileep, for that. And with that, I would hand it over back to Venkat. I really appreciate all the panelists for this exciting discussion. It's been a great talking and a learning experience for myself. Thank you very much. Over back to you, Venkat.
Thanks, Justin. I think for moderating the session. The session was very informative. I think big thanks to Dileep, Masood, and Babita for sharing their knowledge. I think the key points like takeaways, I think the challenges which the organizations facing on unstructured data. Also, I think Madhu and Dileep highlighted about the other privacy acts like the GDPR, CCPA, and even the PDP bill, which is already tabled in India to secure the sensitive data. I think it was a wonderful session. Thank you all. Also, I'd like to thank all the audience for taking their time out from their busy schedule today and joining this session. Further, if you have any unanswered questions, please do reach out to us. We'll try to answer the best possible way. We will be uploading the session on YouTube and we'll share you the link. Please do share it with some of your friends, colleagues who were interested and could not join and attend this session. Thank you all. I think it was a wonderful session. Thank you once again, Dileep, Babita, as well as Madhu for your time. Of course, for the AP and Darshan too. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.